Alright, top 5 budget decks of the format. We already covered the top 5 meta and the top 5 rogue decks in a couple of other videos. I'll put links to them either above in cards or in the description below. But jumping straight in, we have Cyber Dragon off the bat. Now this is one of those structure deck ones where you can get them by just buying a couple structure decks, so not free to play, but I generally find that buying 2 structure decks is a lot more budget friendly than digging through a main box or a selection box, which can easily run you up of $150 or $300. So Cyber Dragon is really good also in the KC Cup format because you want to play as many games as possible. You're really rewarded for the number of games you play. Obviously win percentage matters, but the more games you can play, the higher ranked you'll get. So Cyber Dragon is great because it still has that OTK potential, right? Even after the nerfs to the skill and to the cards in the deck and all the hits on the ban list, it still has that great OTK potential because of the Cyber Dragon fusion, which lets you blow up your opponent's back row and then attack multiple times, dealing 6,000 damage, more than enough to finish off your opponents. It's just, it's been one of those constant OTK strategies that every time there's a KC Cup, it pops up, at least 1 or 2 people get into the top 100 with it, and I don't think that it'll be any exception this time as well. I'm sure there will be at least a couple people who find a way to make it up there with this deck. And yeah, it's like I said, pretty much 95% of it comes out of those structure decks. The only things you really need to dig out of boxes for, there's a Cybernetic Overflow, that's a rare out of a box, so that's super easy to get. And really the only thing is a Cyber Twin Dragon. It's the one ultra rare fusion monster you need that's out of a box. You only need one of it, it's out of a main box, and you can even get by for a little bit out of ones. You can just put the deck together without that, with 3 structure decks, and do just fine. Get your gems by playing with the deck to get that final card you need in the extra deck, and it'll work just fine. Your other XYZ options aren't that important, so definitely think Cyber Dragon is a great pick for this KC Cup, as it is in just about every KC Cup, and it's just a good solid budget option to have at your disposal going forward. Alright, next up we have Noble Knights. This is another I promise these aren't all going to be structure decks. I promise there'll be a couple free-to-play decks in here as well. But yeah, another structure deck one, our Noble Knights. This is another solid deck. Most of it's going to come out of the structure deck. You do need to get a King Custonin or 2, which does come out of a box. Parallel Twister is useful as well, but you can get by without it. I've definitely seen some people running the deck without it and getting by just fine. Getting the King of Games, having success in tournaments. Also, you need a 1 of Gwynnifer, but she's a N common card, whatever you want to call it, so super easy to get. And again, you can replace the lances with other back row or generic anti-back row cards, and that's true of just about any deck you see on here. Probably should have mentioned that at the beginning, but any staples you see like MST, Book of Moon, Forbidden Lance, you can replace them generally with other ones that you might have access to in most cases. Cosmic Cyclone, Floodgate, Canadia, whatever, you know, back row or staples you have access to, they can generally replace the ones that are seen in these deck lists posted above here. But besides that though, most of this deck is going to be accessible through that structure deck, and Noble Knights are still a solid pick. They still have all the power they did before their hit. Like, when Noble Knights were the top tier deck and then they got hit by the ban list, it was just a skill nerf that stopped them from being so consistent. All the power that the deck had is still there. They're just as strong as they were before that ban list hit. They just can't do it consistently, and that's not great for KC Cup, admittedly, right? You want to have a really consistent deck that, you know, can consistently get you enough wins to get you in the top cut, rather than be playing with a deck that is inconsistent and may or may not get you, that might have a lot of power. So usually you don't want to be doing the strategy in the KC Cup, but this deck is still a great pick if you don't have, you know, other options that may be more expensive or more consistent. It's still a great budget pick. And the deck has a lot of power. When you get the right hand and you draw, you know, the proper cards, this deck can absolutely go off, and it can absolutely be devastating to play against. And some decks just can't do anything when this deck gets rolling. It's one of those. But yeah, so if you feel lucky, this is one of those decks where if you think you can high roll enough with this deck and get enough good hands, Noble Knights might be a deck for you to try out then. Alright, next up we have Chronomaly. This is again, ignore the gem costs in the top left corner. A lot of these decks were taken from tournament decks, so I know those gem costs include the side decks. The side deck costs for a lot of these decks, and we just don't need to worry about that with KC Cup or rank play, obviously. But Chronomaly are a great free-to-play deck, though, given the fact that pretty much everything comes out of one Whittle mini box. I believe it's a mini box. And then the rest of the cards are all like event rewards or character drops. Like, a lot of the stuff that comes out of this deck is super easy to get. You can get it all out of one place. And again, your staples can be replaced. The MST, Book of Moon, Treacherous Trap Hole. I'm going to do a separate video about that trifecta of cards and why it's so powerful and why it won't be so powerful in the future. But I definitely think that, you know, this is still a solid deck going forward. It has some tricks up its sleeve. It's extremely consistent for a deck that doesn't have like a consistency skill like Gaia, right? Like we have like multiple cards in here, like the Nebra Disc and the Skull, which allow you to search your deck. You have the sort of Monster Reborn monster that is the Wolf Bark. You can keep bringing stuff back from your graveyard. You do have the skill, which gives you some consistency in choosing what XYZ monster you want to go for, though. So this is still a really solid, fun deck to play with. I definitely enjoy playing with Chronomaly. And yeah, I love the consistency that this deck offers, where you very rarely do you feel like you have like unplayable hands with this deck. Like you usually generally feel like you can either play your hand, get an XYZ monster on the board or Chateau, or you at the very least have some like protection with Treacherous and booking your setup to get your plays going. So yeah, definitely enjoy playing this deck, and it's a really solid free to play deck for this KC Cup going forward, I feel like. Alright, next up we have Dynamist. Now, OTK decks, again, are great in KC Cup, and I think that Dynamist will probably be a popular one that a number of people are going to try to use. And it's extremely budget. You can see just looking through here, everything is all out of the one archetype, and that all comes out of one box. That's all you need to do is just go through that one box to get the Dynamists out of. Most of the XYZ monsters in here, they're beneficial, but honestly, you can get by without most of them. You don't need too many specific ones. Whatever you happen to have access to, you do. You can just throw them in. The main thing with this deck is you activate one Pendulum Scale, which protects your monsters from being destroyed. You activate another Pendulum Scale to protect your monsters from being targeted, and you just swarm the board with all your Dynamists and try to OTK your opponent. And you know that for a KC Cup setting, that's the perfect kind of deck that you want. Quick little one-ofs, quick little OTK wins, get through games fast. And there's one super rare in this deck that you need 3 copies of, and that's it. The other super rare you can get by off of just 1. I think some people maybe run 2, but you really don't need more than 1 or 2 copies of it. The spell card you need 3 copies of, but that's it. Again, all out of one box, super easy to get, extremely affordable deck. This might be the most budget deck on the list, because again, it's all just really cheap out of one box, one archetype. You don't even need staples, you don't need Book of Moon, you don't need MST. You can get by with just the archetype cards. And again, it's actually a pretty powerful strategy, and it fits the KC Cup theme very well. Those quick OTK decks, get your games over fast. Dynamist, I think, is a great pick for this KC Cup going forward. And it wouldn't surprise me if you see a couple sneak into the top 100, given what the deck can do. Alright, last but not least, another Structure Deck deck. Blue Eyes White Dragon. It's kind of similar to Noble Knights in a lot of ways. This isn't the most consistent deck. If you feel lucky and feel like you can high roll throughout the KC Cup, then this might be something you could look into. Blue Eyes are, again, they have a lot of that power that they did, since before they got hit. They just kind of, feels like they lack the consistency that they need to be, like a top deck. And I know a lot of them are now going with this melody play, so they're a little bit more consistent with the melody. But the Blue Eyes' big problem is, again, if they draw, every deck can draw really good and they do really well. They draw really bad, you brick, you do poorly. But Blue Eyes, more than any other deck, like, you hit the extremes, right? If you draw really well, you're going to steamroll your opponent in a lot of games. But if you don't draw good, you're in trouble. And in this KC Cup format, that's generally not what you want to do. But if you're feeling lucky, maybe you can go ahead and go Blue Eyes. It's a simple deck to play. Most people have learned it by now. It's one of the most popular, if not the most popular deck in the game. It probably still is at this point. I haven't checked the popularity rating for ranked play recently, but Blue Eyes is one of those decks I'm sure you'll see pop up here and there. I don't know if you'll see a lot in the final day in the top 100, but if you're a budget player, you're just trying to play this weekend for fun, you're just trying to get your gems on a daily basis or whatever, and Blue Eyes is not a bad deck to do it with, to get some wins with, try to ladder up just a bit, get to that KC level max that you're trying to. Just try to get lucky, high roll your way up there. At some point, you got to get lucky, win a few games, and get to that DLV level max, right? So anyways, that's it for this video. Let me know if there's any of these decks you'd like me to see do a full deck profile on, actually do like a deep dive into them, and actually look at all the cards in the deck, actually like do some gameplay with them on. So let me know if there's any deck you want to see in particular out of those, and I'll go ahead and try to get to that. And yeah, if you guys liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe. It does help out the video a lot. Thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful rest of the day.